gotten a handout as they came in. And before I actually start talking to you and asking you questions, I'd like you to just take the next few minutes and think about what your personal goals are for the next 12 months. But I'd like them to be very specific. So not something like, I'd like a job that pays a lot of money. It doesn't really tell you anything in terms of what it is you want. So if you're in school and you want to graduate with a certain grade point average, or you want to get a job in the next 6 months in a particular field, be as specific as you can. If you can only write down one goal in the few minutes that I'm going to ask you to do this, that's fine. If you've been thinking about your goals a lot and you have 3 that you can just write off the top of your head, awesome. But it's entirely an exercise for your benefit. There's no requirement for you to share. So the goals can be anything you want. For those of you who don't know, I'm Gina Dolan, and I am now a director of marketing. And you're like, why is this woman talking to us? I started out my career as a software engineer, writing assembler code for networks, working for AT&T. And I moved from there into product management, where I wrote the marketing requirements for the products that the engineering staff would develop. And then I managed from beginning, conception to launch of the product. And now what I mostly do is I take and I create value propositions. I convert technobabble into English for the consumers. But that's where I'm at now. And the question that I was asked to address for this particular talk is how to deal with I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm a fraud. I'm a fake. These are actually quite normal feelings that most people have, unfortunately, on a daily basis. Maybe not so much the fraud and the fake, but our minds wander at least 30% of the time, with few exceptions. And I'll let you fill in the blank on that. What that means is not only do they wander, but they tend to wander in a negative direction. So it's not usually that I'm listening to my boss speak and I think, this guy loves me. He's going to promote me. No, it's usually like, oh, can I do this? Where did this assignment come from? At the beginning of my career, I was really blessed, and I had a great group of friends. We used to go to dinner about once a week. And as I mentioned, I have a background in software engineering. And at this particular time, I was working at a company as an industry analyst with a bunch of other people who were industry analysts. And they kept saying to me, Gina, you can do so much better. You can make so much more money. Why are you wasting your time here? Go back to working in a tech firm and really launch your career. Well, after a month or two of browbeating, I took their advice and I applied for another job. And I got it. Well, that wasn't the good part. The good part was I really took their advice and I asked for what I thought was an outrageous amount of money, figuring this would be the negotiating point. No, they said, Gina, you can have this job and we're going to give you that much money. Exactly. I don't know who just said, but that was my reaction. I was like, nobody in their right mind is going to pay me this much money. How did I get here? Oh my God, I'm a fraud. They're going to figure this out. I'm going to be out on the street for at least 30 days. I worried. I stressed. I was really convinced that they had made a mistake. Why was I so fearful? Why was I so scared? I kept all this tape, these negative tapes running around in my head. Had I gone back to my group of friends and said, what do I do? Had I talked to other people in the industry and said, what do you have some advice? What if they find out I'm not as good as they think I am? Or did I actually sit down and go, let's see, who did I interview with? I interviewed with the vice president of marketing, who's really well respected and who everybody thinks is really smart. And I interviewed with his director. And when I asked my friends to give references, did I ask them to lie? No. What happened was, the really good side of the story, is my friends were right. I had been underpaid. I wasn't a fraud. I wasn't a phony. But what did happen was during that time, I was not performing at my best because I had all these horrible thoughts going around my head. Now, the good news is I'm a hard worker. And so, 30, 40 days later, people still liked me. They hadn't changed their mind. They hadn't come up to me and said, oh, I'm so sorry I hired you. What are you doing here? Here's the door. No, I kept that job. And I was able to continue on in my career. And it was a great lesson. But one of the big lessons was, what happens when you just let all these negative thoughts, and I had not read the research at that time. Like I said, there's been a significant amount of research done showing that our mind wander. And when they do, it's usually in a negative direction. And I was ready to follow those negative thoughts off the cliff because I wasn't talking to people. And I hadn't asked myself, okay, well, I love this job. It's a great company. I'd done research on the company. I knew I wanted to work there. And when I interviewed, I liked the people. So I didn't say to myself, okay, well, maybe I'm a fraud, but maybe I can fix this. What do I need to do to keep the job? What are the things I need to do today, tomorrow, next week to make sure that they are happy with me and they keep me? And that was my one experience at feeling like a fraud and feeling like a phony. But the other side, the other group of negative feelings that I think everybody experiences is I'm not good enough. Oh, I started feeling like that as a kid. I wasn't smart enough. Somebody else got straight A's. I didn't. Of course, did I study as hard? I was convinced half my life that I was at least 5 pounds overweight. I was, perpetually on a diet because I wasn't thin enough, and my friends all wore one size smaller. So clearly, I was not thin enough. I wasn't rich enough. I wasn't successful enough because the truth is, we can always find people who are smarter, richer, more famous, thinner. It's just, how many times do you think Einstein said to himself, gee, I'm not the most handsome guy on the block? I don't think he ever worried about it. I haven't seen his hairstyle. It just doesn't seem like those are thoughts that he entertained. Now, hopefully everybody had a chance to write down one goal that they're thinking about that they'd like to get done in the next year. Think about what negative thoughts you may have entertained this morning, yesterday, last week. And as you think about that, look at that piece of paper you have and ask yourself, do any of these negative thoughts represent obstacles to achieving my goals? If I said I wasn't rich enough, but my goal is to get my MBA at the end of the year, maybe you can take a loan if you can't afford the tuition. So raise your hand if you don't, and I'm not going to ask you what your goals are or what your obstacles are unless you want to share. But when you think about some of the negative thoughts you may have had this week or last, and now you look at what you've written down as a goal, can anybody raise their hand and say, yes, I have a negative thought here, and it is an obstacle. I see a few heads nodding. So you think that one of your negative thoughts or fears is an obstacle to achieving your goal. And you as well. Okay. One of the other things I'd like to ask you to do is when you look at your goals, is what is it you can do, one thing, just one thing you can do this week to take you further to that goal? What is it that you can do next week or the week after? And are there obstacles to doing that one thing? You've got a calculus exam coming up, and that was never your strong suit. And you know that one of the things you're going to have to do is study. But maybe you don't think studying is going to be just quite everything that you need to do. Well, I'd like to introduce two concepts about dealing with these negative feelings. Just like I said, everybody has them. You know, it's like catching a cold. You can't get by in this life without getting one at some point in your life, right? So you are going to have negative feelings. The two things I would like to suggest to you that will help you is that when you catch yourself in a negative mindset and you start thinking, oh, I'm not smart enough, this exam is going to be so hard, my credentials aren't good enough to get me into that next job. In addition to focusing on whatever plan it is that you come up with, things that you can do today, tomorrow, and next week, because it turns out that focusing our mind does two things. It helps shut out all those little evil voices, and the other thing that the researchers have found is it actually makes us happier. That when we're really focused on a particular endeavor, whether it's reading a great novel, skiing, talking to a friend we haven't seen in a long time, and we shut out all the other little voices that are going on in our mind. So focus is a very important tool. But as I refer back to the example of when I had these awful fears about being a failure, not a failure, a fake, a phony. And I was sure that they were going to show me the door. Anybody have a suggestion as to what maybe I could have done differently when I was going through all that angst? Anybody want to volunteer some suggestions, if you were my friend at that time, what you might have said to me? Yes?
I would have probably shared my struggles with how I felt, because I feel as if sometimes having somebody who understands the struggles that you're going through and just having someone else going through that makes you feel like you're not going insane thinking those things. Just seeing that being reflected with someone else, I think, is something I would have really sort of done if I was your friend. I just said, yeah, I feel that way too sometimes. And we can work together by sharing it and try to find tips and strategies on how to better deal with it together.
Absolutely. That's definitely one tactic that works. And it's related to a bigger tactic. Anybody else have suggestions or thoughts about what you would have advised me when I was going through all this angst? Yeah.
Well, if you just focus on the positive things that you do bring to the table, because there has to be some reason that they hired you. So, like making a list of things that make you unique and like unique skills that you have.
Yeah. So focus, going back to what is it they want, and how can I deliver on that and be successful? Any other suggestions or thoughts about what I could have done? Yes.
You mentioned that there was multiple people in the interview. So if I were your friend, I would have asked you, like, well, who did you interview with? And you would have said X, Y, and Z. And I would say, well, maybe if it were just one person, there's a possibility. But you interviewed with multiple people of great tenure in their status, and I don't think they would have taken a chance on you if they didn't feel you were going to be an asset to their company. So I know you can do it.
And that's always a wonderful thing. And really, the comments that I'm getting here are all on target. Besides the fact that we have these monkey minds that like to go off and play by themselves and get us into trouble. We also are part of a community. We are literally wired to connect. The concept of the rugged individual, the lone wolf, those are great for selling Hollywood scripts, movies, and novels. But they're not who we are as people. And so your suggestion about sharing your burdens, a burden shared is a burden halved. Your suggestion about, hey, I know you can do it, those are great. But sometimes we actually do run into problems. As I said, calculus personally was never one of my strong suits. But I had a friend, it wasn't her strong suit either. You know what she did? She flunked. But the most novel part is she took it over and she got a tutor and she got a B. And really the point of that is that we're not alone. The big thing was, oh, she got a tutor. She got help. She actually went to an expert who knew calculus and maybe could explain it differently than the way her instructor was providing that information. And now she went from flunking to getting a B. It probably didn't hurt that it was her second time around, but it didn't hurt her GPA because she took it over. In fact, depends on, I guess, what school you go to, because I see some questioning look in your eye there, but at the school we were at, it didn't hurt her GPA. And it was a way for her to succeed. And her sharing that information was invaluable. So one of the things that I know that I didn't do at the beginning of my career was network and ask for help. Now, you have to be a little careful sometimes when you ask for help. I don't know about you, but not everybody I know has a positive attitude. And I remember when I was first going into college, and I was actually going to major in something called water resources. And my aunt called me up and she said, "What are you doing that for? It's a man's major." Yeah, and unfortunately this was not an aunt that I held a great deal of high esteem for. And my mother was totally good with it. So my aunt's opinion was canceled by my mother's good opinion. But we've all known people. And one of the things I would like to suggest, well, it's very important to have a network that will support you, like I did early on in my career, where these women were just awesome and saying, "You've got to go for it. I know you can do better. You absolutely can." I have also met people who've absolutely talked me out of things. "You said you were going to do what? Why do you think you can do that? Are you sure?" When you hear that, really think about what it is you're hearing. Does this person really know you? Do they know your capabilities? And it might even be a good friend or a relative. One of my negative detractors was a relative. It was not something my aunt could have done. My aunt didn't have a college education. She was in awe of the fact that I was going to college, let alone, in her mind, going off to major in a man's field. Well, to a certain extent, it turned out she was right, that it was a man's field. I showed up for Water Resources 101. There were 100 students, and there were 4 women in the class. Yeah, so I think it mentioned something about wanting to give back and encourage women to pursue, because you are absolutely going to find obstacles and challenges to moving forward. So going back to those goals and what it is you can do, when you look at those goals and you stay within your own head, how long a list did anybody come up with when they looked at their goals and they they thought about, what can I do this week? What can I do next week? What can I do next month? Anybody come up with like 10 items? Close to that. What would have happened if after you created that list, you went and you shared it with people that you really respected, who know something about what it is you want to achieve? Anybody have any ideas what might have happened to that list? Yeah. Yeah.
Lost accountability. I have to do it. Tell somebody else.
That's a possibility, but usually you have to actually ask for accountability. People nowadays, we're inundated with information and we're in overload. But most people, and this is the other thing that will give you some of their time. Can I see just a quick raise of hands? How many of you have ever asked for help when you were struggling with a particular issue? Good. Great. Why do you think some people don't ask for help? What would be some of the obstacles that would keep you from asking for help? Sure.
Sometimes you're embarrassed.
Embarrassed because you feel
You
like,
don't know, and you may feel that you should know, and if you ask for the help, then it's opening that up and letting people know that you don't know. Sometimes it's okay not to know everything.
well, and that's another point that I meant to make a little earlier. When I talked about I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not thin enough, I'm not rich enough, do you see any commonalities in all those sentences?
I'm not.
I am not good enough. I am not smart enough. I am not tall enough. I am not rich enough. And so really where I want you to go is that, yes, when you stay in your head and you're having all these negative I statements, I am not smart enough, whatever your particular concern is at that particular moment, you are not alone. As I said, we're destined to connect. We were designed. I don't know if probably almost everybody here has read a story, watched TV, or seen a movie where the bad person, typically the traitor, was said, you're banished. They didn't go off with your head. They said, you're banished. And why was that such a horrible punishment to be banished? In the 12th or 13th century, why do you think that might have been, or the 10th century, why do you think being banished could have been a bad thing?
You lost your community and everything you were familiar with. When you were banished, you had to go off to a completely new, different place where you're unfamiliar with everything and people that are already there are unfamiliar with you. So you have to live it up.
Actually, a little worse than that. It was one step away from a death sentence. In feudal times, if you were banished, you didn't have a car. You couldn't hop on a plane, take a train. You had to walk. And you had whatever you could carry on your back. And maybe you had weapons, maybe you didn't. But when you think about how we function in our society, we're an incredibly advanced society. If I threw you out, I'll joke, what do you want when you go on a desert island? Probably some fresh water. But if you have to catch your own food, build your own shelter, and then who do you talk to? Yourself? That monkey mind that's going to say, oh, I'm going to drown next week, I'm sure. Yeah, no, it was almost a death sentence. It was much worse than just losing your community. It could literally mean you lost your life, and it was a slow and agonizing way to lose your life. And so really the point here is it's not all about me. We need to leverage our network. We need to build our network. And going back to the comment you made about, oh, well, maybe I don't want to ask somebody because I don't want to bother them. I probably should already know what this is that I'm asking about. Do you know what happens most of the time when you ask somebody for help?
I thought, well, most of the time, they help.
Not only do they help,
But they feel valued because you asked them.
absolutely.
Which doesn't mean that they are always helpful.
Well, this is true. This is absolutely true. So going back to the story, but most people, when you ask them for help, they're like, wow, you want me to help you? You think I know something about this subject and that I'm an expert and that I can share with you? It's very flattering. So, you know, if I'm not about to board a plane or take care of a loved one who's sick, yeah, I'll help, sure. It's very flattering to be asked to be helped. To your point, absolutely. Have you ever been outside and said, do you know how to get to? And then said, yeah, you have, you've done it. Yeah. Oh, you go this way and that way, and eventually you may wind up where it is you think you want to go. So if you can ask for advice from your friends, I'm looking for a tutor, I'm looking for somebody who's knowledgeable in a particular topic. Can you share with me? I mean, insurance companies do this all the time. They've learned that not all doctors are created equal. Your doctor says, oh, you need surgery. Your insurance company says, I will pay you to get a second opinion. You may think your doctor's good, and you may have been with him for the last 30 or 40 years, but we feel better if you got a second opinion. So yes, who your peers are, or who your support group is, makes a difference. And yes, most people do feel very flattered and honored. Now the other side of that coin is you too will feel flattered and honored if you are able to help somebody else. Not necessarily wait for them to ask, but when you see somebody struggling, and it could be a very small thing. You have a friend who's been sick for 3 or 4 days. You pick up the phone, you give them 10 minutes of your time. It can mean the world to them. You see somebody struggling in a subject that you've aced, you go, hey, would you like to study together? I think I could probably help you with that. And you do it in a way that's non-confrontational, and if they say no, that's fine too. But the other advantage is when they say yes, you not only feel flattered and validated that they would appreciate your help. Turns out one of the other ways that we often feel happiness and joy is when we're giving. So it doesn't mean you can come and ask me for $1,000. But if you need help in a particular topic that I'm an expert at, or you need help carrying something out to your car, something that I clearly am capable of physically, emotionally, or intellectually doing, then yes, I'm going to feel validated and I'm going to feel really good about being able to help you. Even if I don't know you that well. It's still a wonderful thing. So now, go back and look at your list. And at least 2 of you said that your negative concerns could possibly be obstacles to achieving your goals. Can you write down the names of 3 people that might be able to help you, or who might know somebody who can help you? One of my all-time favorite quotes, and I have many, but this is a particular favorite, was by Isaac Newton. And he said, if I have seen further, it is because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. So really just, in summary, I just want to say, when you hear these negative voices, you might want to take some of those goals and put them on a 3x5 card, stick them in your pocket, and the next time you feel like you're a lemon about to go off the cliff with all these negative thoughts, pull that out and go, how does that relate? And then if it is a real obstacle, because it may be, who can you ask for help, or who can you ask that can help you find the help you need? Because help is all around us, and it's frequently a phone call or an email away. Thank you.
Hi, if you've enjoyed this video, please like or provide a comment below, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends.